What about sleep and alcohol?
Yeah, drink lots of it. It's fantastic for your sleep.
Said like a true Brit.
It's right there on our passports. Alcohol is probably the most misunderstood sleep aid that there is out there. Alcohol is in a class of drugs that we call the sedatives. And sedation is not sleep. But when you have a couple of nightcaps in the evening, you mistake the former for the latter. And if I were to show you the electrical signature of your sleep with alcohol versus without, you would see how different it is. It's not the same. That alcohol will actually, it pushes you into what looks like deep, slow wave sleep. But it's kind of the faster, slow brainwave activity. So it's sort of the less nutritious of those deep, slow brainwaves, but it's simply sedation. The second problem with alcohol is that, like caffeine, but through a different mechanism by way of acting on the sympathetic fight or flight branch of the nervous system, it will make you wake up more times throughout the night. And once again, they're so brief that you don't usually commit it to memory. The other thing is that because of that sleep fragmentation that principally is happening in the first half of the night, this is why on your sleep tracker, when, if I look at my Oura Ring data, I don't typically drink, but even if I have, a glass, I get hit not just with this. Another thing I'm going to tell you about REM sleep, I lose a good amount of my deep sleep. And it turns out that it's really the fragmentation of your sleep early on in the night when the alcohol concentration is highest, when your liver and your kidneys have not had the chance to metabolically clear it. And when you get fragmentation in the first half of the night, you're not getting your deep sleep. And as a result, there's a great study that demonstrated that alcohol after dinner, 1 glass, decreased the amount of deep sleep. And as a result, produced a 50% drop in growth hormone release. 50%. I don't know what you'd have to age an individual by to get them to have a 50% drop in growth hormone. But so it's consequential. It's not epiphenomenal. Just because you don't get deep sleep, you may say, well, so yes, and so what? What's the consequence of that lack? Well, one is that you don't get your growth hormone release for reparation and repair. But then the other thing about alcohol, people love me, don't they? I'm saying all this. Someone once told me, when we listen to you, your personality is like the greatest prophylactic known to man.
Oh, you're the fun police.
Thanks yeah, exactly. Yeah. God, and that goes together already with my bloody acerbic personality. Anyway, nevertheless, alcohol also is very good at blocking your REM sleep. And it turns out it's not the alcohol, it's the metabolic byproducts of it, particularly the aldehydes. And it's the aldehydes that will essentially act like a sort of jamming up of the cogs of the gears of the generation of REM sleep. So you become REM sleep deficient. This is the reason that people will sometimes say, God, we had 2 or 3 bottles of wine last night when friends came over at the weekend. And then I slept in late because we went to bed late. And I was having these crazy dreams, just wild, crazy dreams. What's happened there is that, firstly, REM sleep comes mostly in the second half of the night. You get most of your deep sleep in the first half of the night. If you're sleeping later into the morning, that's the REM sleep rich phase part of your sleep cycle. So your brain has a different taste preference for what it wants to eat from the finger buffet of the sleep menu at night. Early in the night, all it wants to do is feast on deep sleep, very little REM. As you go through into the second half of the night, it likes to switch its taste preference to REM. The further you sleep later into the morning, the more REM sleep you get. If you want to increase the amount of REM sleep, one of the things you can do is just sleep half an hour later into that morning and you'll start to get more REM sleep. But what alcohol will do is it will start to block the amount of REM sleep that you've been having for most of the night. Your brain is so clever, though. This sleep is so strongly conserved across biology, across phylogeny, that sleep emerged, as I said, with living organisms and has stayed there. It's one of the most preserved behaviors that we see in any living organism. And it's preserved at the level of the stages, too. So your brain, what I mean by that is, it's understanding how much REM sleep you, Chris, should have had across the night when you've had a few too many drinks. And it keeps a clock counter of how much REM sleep you should have had and you've not obtained. And finally, by those late morning hours on the Saturday when you've slept late, your liver and your kidneys have finally excreted all of the alcohol. So in the last hour or 2 of sleep, your brain gets the REM sleep it will have normally obtained, plus it tries to get back that which it's lost. And it's called a REM sleep rebound effect. And that's why you have really intense dreaming and you have these really crazy, bizarre experiences. Does your brain get back all of the REM sleep that it lost? No, it doesn't. It can only accumulate about 50% of the debt. So you will still be REM sleep deficient. REM sleep, it turns out, if you want to say, give the head-to-head challenge, which is more important, non-REM versus REM? Well, I'm going to firstly tell you that all stages of sleep are important. Different stages do different things at different times of night. But the ultimate test of what's more important is presumably death. How quickly do you die when you don't have one versus the other? They did a series of studies back in the 1980s that will never be replicated again because I think they were just, so barbaric. They started to sleep deprive rats to the point when they died. And what they found is firstly that rats will die as quickly of food deprivation as they will of sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation will kill you just as quickly as no food, about 11 days in the rats. Then they said, okay, let me now selectively just deprive the rats of deep sleep so they still get REM sleep, or they get deep sleep and we remove REM sleep. And when they looked at that, the rats died from REM sleep after about 20 days. So REM sleep was, still lethal. A lack of REM sleep was still lethal. Non-REM sleep, they still died, but they died after about 60 days. So in other words, rats will die quicker from REM sleep deprivation than they will from deep non-REM sleep deprivation. We all predicted the opposite in those studies. Why? Because I told you that non-REM sleep was the original OG in terms of the evolutionary course of sleep. It was the first stage of sleep. So surely the first stage of sleep that emerged in the course of evolution would be the fundamental, elemental, most important. The opposite was true. Great study then back at Harvard. And what we find is that a lack of sleep, short sleep, as I said, shorter your sleep, shorter your life. And it's sort of it's a decaying curve, which is that, the less sleep that you have, the higher and higher your death risk. But let's come back to that 7 to 9 hours of sweet spot, because something odd happens. When you get past about 9, your death risk does not keep going down. It goes back up, as if more sleep after 9 hours is deathly. And people have said, well, that's proof that sleep can actually kill you. If you look at the data, at least one of two things is happening in those studies. When you get sick, what is the first thing that you typically want to do?
Sleep.
Exactly. And it turns out that the reason is that your immune system has a very adaptive network that when you get sick, it brute forces a set of chemicals to induce you into more sleep because it knows that the Swiss Army knife of health, the best thing that it has to combat disease and sickness, is this thing called sleep. So it drives you to sleep more. And so what was happening in those studies is that whatever the disease was,
the sickest people were
sleeping more.
It's like an unhealthy user bias.
And it looks like artificially more sleep is killing you.
It's just that the people that were sleeping 9 hours or more per night, there was something underlying that was causing them to...
It was too powerful for sleep to overcome despite sleep trying. The other reason is because of sleep quality versus quantity. Typically what we find is that people who have really bad sleep quality stay in bed for far longer. And sleep quality also predicts all-cause mortality. So as a consequence, it looks like people, when they say, what time did you get into bed? What time did you wake up? That's how they measure the amount of sleep, as it were, poorly as it is. Those people who are in bed for 10 hours died sooner. And the reason is not because they were sleeping 10 hours. It's because they were trying to get back more sleep because the quality of their sleep was so bad that they had to stay in bed for longer. And therefore, poor quality of sleep masquerades as longer quantity of sleep being bad for you. But to come back to it, this Harvard study then looked at how much of different stages of sleep people were getting across the lifespan because they were able to do this with fancy sort of technology. And what they found was that when they put non-REM sleep, again, in the same statistical model with REM sleep beat out deep non-REM sleep in humans to predict your all-cause mortality. And here, it wasn't this reverse shape, J shape, like total sleep duration, which is, once you get past 9 hours, it starts to hook back up. No, with REM sleep, the less and less that you had, the worse and worse your mortality risk. It was a linear relationship. And so across animals, across human beings, REM sleep seems to have been, if you want to do the math, which I wouldn't argue for anyone to do, if there is one stage of sleep that's mortality more important than the other, it would be REM sleep, which is also the reason maybe to raise caution regarding alcohol and then maybe THC.
Quick note, talking with Mattthew really drives home how much our overall health depends on the basics, like getting a good night's rest, which is why I've been prioritizing tracking my health more closely, and Function has made it unbelievably easy to get a clear picture of what's happening inside of my body. They run lab tests twice a year that monitor over 100 biomarkers. They've got a team of expert physicians that then take that data and put it in a simple dashboard and give you insights and actionable recommendations to improve your health and lifespan. They track everything from your hormones to your nutrient levels to key areas that affect your sleep. They even screen for 50 types of cancer at stage 1, which is 5 times more data than you get from your annual physical. And best of all, Dr. Andrew Huberman, Dr. Walker's colleague, is their scientific advisor, so you can trust that the data and insights you receive are scientifically sound and practical. Getting your blood work done and analyzed like this would usually cost thousands, but with Function, it's only $500. Right now, you can get the exact same blood panels I get and bypass their waitlist by going to the link in the description below or heading to functionhealth.com/modernwisdom. That's functionhealth.com/modernwisdom. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, you will love the full-length, nearly 3-hour-long conversation with Dr. Walker right here. Go on, watch it.